Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. Uh, this is a very meaningful interview for me on a hugely personal basis with ERAN ZIMRIN, uh, um, who has an amazing background in the things he's done in manufacturing, in insurance and business, and now he's settled in to dealing with child protection and leading efforts in prevention and therapy, in training, assessment, the whole thing about child protection and why I was drawn to this. And I was explaining to Iran that when I was in high school, I was bullied relentlessly and made fun of, and all the vestiges of that bullying are still with me today. And you hear about all these stories, that stuff doesn't go away. And fortunately for me, I took a lot of that energy of being bullied and used it productively, wanting to yell out to the kids who bullied me, well, look at me now. I'm writing books and I'm interviewing and I'm this and I had a TV show but it was a piece of energy and it listen, it held me back. I never went to a party in high school. And I never had a date. Nothing. There was no. It was an imprisonment for me for 4 years. So, looking at what Iran does and the work he does, this is so needed. Well, it's so needed because I was reading, looking at my notes, and there were some words that I pulled out from reading about the organization Eli, uh, uh, stuff to do with excellence was a word I pulled out. Child abuse prevention, adaptability, and what a crazy world we live in. And he's going to talk all about that with cyberbullying and the internet and on all this stuff, pornography, and I mean it's just like endless, and it really is. It's such a devastating human problem. We can talk about that. I marvel. I We'll talk about it. I marvel truly looking at my grandchildren and what I've come to learn looking at these grandchildren, watching them grow these last 5 years. What you put in, you get out. What you put into a child, you get out. And there's no magic. And so if you put in good stuff and you care or you fix things, uh, it, it's so um, it's so important, and it's a right. It's a human right to get that kind of care. So, to my introduction, this is so important. It's heavy stuff. So my monologue is done, Aaron. Why don't you do a little background, uh, and then we'll talk about your journey.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. ELI, the Israel Association for Child Protection, since 1979,
Wow.
uh, actually founded by my mother, Dr. Anita Zimrin, which is a story by itself that I can talk a little bit again. We are dealing with child abuse and child protection. We are dealing with all forms of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. We are all about breaking the intergenerational cycles of abuse. We are working with the victims, the children, but not only the victims, but the whole environment, the family usually, the parents, the grandparents that may be the source of the problem, siblings that may be involved or not involved, and all the surrounding relevant community. Unlike any other social problems, the people who are involved in child abuse are not seeking for help. The parents are afraid, they are ashamed. Sometimes they feel that they are right. The children are afraid, of course. They may feel guilty, and they are afraid to come back home and get punished for talking or whatever. We can understand that. We're working with all segments of the society in Israel, the secular, the ultra-Orthodox, the Arabs, the Russian population, the Ethiopian populations, the soldiers, the kibbutzim. We are working all over Israel, all over the country. We are doing a lot of lectures, training for therapists, we're working with courts who are trying to understand what is happening within the family, and they are seeking for our help to understand whether it's the mother who is inventing stuff about the father, or is it the father that is being afraid of not seeing the children. We have our school-based prevention and awareness program, where during the last year we had more than 100,000 children going through the program in the education system. This is a very big number in Israel. Well, in this program we have plays for the children. We're working with the little children about body boundaries, and older children about internet safety, and stuff like that. During this program, we have the statistics of 1.5% of self-disclosure of cases. Like, for example, just the other day, a 6-year-old came to the actress after the play. The actresses are always available after the play, and she just said 4 words, which were, my grandfather touched me there. Just imagine how much courage she need to have in order to say those words.
Wow.
During the last year, we have done 24,000 hours of therapy, one-on-one therapy. Again, it's a very big number in Israel. We have the hotline, which went online 2 years ago. As it went online, actually 85% of the referrals came through this online hotline. We are talking about more than 11,000 referrals coming through. People are coming also from the welfare departments in the local authorities. Neighbors are calling sometimes, school advisors, and so on. So this is a little bit about the organization that is, and we're
Okay.
doing this work for the last 47 years.
Oof. All right, I'm looking at my notes here. Tell me something about yourself and I looked on LinkedIn, you're on LinkedIn, that doesn't show up on LinkedIn, but deeply shapes how you lead. It's a little heavy.
I didn't get the question, please.
Well, so in other words, on looking on LinkedIn, we look at the things you've accomplished in various industries. Now you're doing what you're doing, but there are things on LinkedIn you don't see how you are a leader, because you're a leader now. And some of the qualities of being a leader.
Well, as you mentioned, I had other things that I did in my past. I was in the textile industry. I used to manufacture fashion for women in Israel. And later on, as the manufacturing industry moved from Israel to the Far East, I left this business and stepped into the finance and insurance business. I've been there for something like 15 years.
Okay.
And today this business continue as it is managed by my wife, who is probably doing a better work than myself, so it's okay. And then, as I mentioned, actually my mother founded Eli, and as she passed on 5 years ago, actually, we sat down the family trying to figure out what is going to happen with Eli. We didn't want anything bad to happen. We didn't want anyone to come in for the money and squeeze the money out of it. We didn't want it to change direction and lose its core business, core activities. And we decided that I will step in. The whole family still today is behind me. And actually, I brought in my management skills. I'm not a therapist, but I know how to manage. I know how to work with finance. I know how to bring money. I know how to work with the therapist, employees, if I may call them so.
Uh-huh.
And we are doing quite good. The work has actually tripled itself during the last 5 years. And we are trying to reach as much as possible because an extra child is an extra world
Yep.
that we need to reach.
Correct. There's something, and actually, I'm not sure where this comes from. It's either comes from the Bible, maybe even the Quran. I don't know, or the Torah. I don't know, somewhere. But he or she who saves a life saves the world. And
This is where I took it from. And it doesn't matter whether it's the Quran or the Bible or whatever. Maybe these are doors to the same room.
yes, so I completely understand. It's what guides me along. So. You are surrounded every day by trauma, especially obviously involving children. Um, how do you metabolize that? How do you deal with that? Because it's so emotional, so it doesn't harden you or overwhelm you. How do you deal with what you're dealing with?
Well, I've been actually surrounded by these issues from a very young age. It was in the family. Um, what sustains me is seeing the progress, both the progress within Eli and the growing involvement and responsibility taken by the state and the society. All of this motivated me, still motivate me to do even more. The society have done a long way during the last almost 50 years of Eli. The government is doing much more than it did in the past. Still have a way to go. We can talk about that, but there was a long way.
Okay. Um, and Ron, in your experience, what do people most misunderstand about trauma and recovery? What do they misunderstand, especially in children? What don't they understand about this?
Maybe the critical importance of early disclosure. When I talked about the 6-year-old girl, for
Yeah.
example, that I talked about in the beginning, it's very important for us, for me, to get to this child when she is 6 years old and not at 16 after 10 years of abuse. Extremely important. It is essential in order to stop the harm itself. After that, treatment become possible, allowing the child to process what happened, stand back up, and build their life in the best possible way.
Okay. Okay. Um, in reading about some of the stuff you do, when it and you said, and by the way, I'm writing things down as I'm taking notes about what you're talking. I'm one of the few interviewers who takes notes during the interview, so that early disclosure is really powerful. You know, that is such a powerful determinant of a future of a life, a human life. Uh,
This is why we go to the kindergarten and small children.
yeah. You know, I did read somewhere statistics, of all the abuse. There's all kinds of abuse. It's interesting. We didn't talk about it before we went on air. I was just giving you my background, but I've interviewed lately. Interesting. I've interviewed. We could talk about this. Maybe if you come back, we could talk about it. But I've interviewed several women actually who had some severe child abuse stuff.
Yes.
Severe. And these are years and years and years later. I mean, I interviewed one woman recently who was adopted. No, was not adopted, but they became. She lived with foster parents who only took her so they can get the money, but abused her and abused her until she actually ran away. She was 16 or 17. She ran away from the. But unknown caller. So what you're saying, I forgot to shut my phone off. And I usually am so meticulous about that. Sorry about that. I'm always meticulous, but it's so powerful. The whole early disclosure and getting to these. Uh, um, so when a child has experienced harm, and reading about some of the stuff you do about true protection, uh, what are some of the beyond safety? What are some of the services and things that you do when a child has experienced harm? I mean, that's a big question.
Yes, of course, what we do is an extremely big question. Um, we would invest, no, uh, when a case is discovered, the first thing is to take care of the protection of the child. We need to remove the person who harmed the child from the physical place where the child stays. If we are talking about a sibling, then we can send him to the grandfather. If we are talking about the father, we can send him away from home uh, because we must stop the abuse itself at the very beginning. And then we can start the therapeutic process, whatever need to be done.
Okay. Um, you also have to balance, the structure of what you're doing with, I think, with a certain kind of tenderness. I mean, so so what you're doing, it's so intense. It has to be structure and then, but you also got to be really like tender. I mean, that's as I'm digesting all this and my mind is firing away, the importance of what you're doing. I'm just making an editorial comment based on my limited is so important because it's a human life and it's a journey, and that's how important it is. So you have to be so many different things at Ali, so many different things, structure and healing, but you also got to be tender, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And for that, we have different people in LE. I'm the CEO. I'm not a therapist. We have, for example, a therapist who can play Monopoly with a child for 2, 3 hours. I could not do that. She's doing Monopoly therapy. I cannot sit and play Monopoly for 2 hours, but she can. and we are different kind of people because she cannot manage money. So,
Balance. Yeah,
of course,
but you
so we
balance.
have, so it's not only that we have myself as a manager and the therapist as a therapist, we have many different kind of therapists in ELI. We have therapists who specialize in small children. We are working with children starting the age of 3 years old.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and we have other therapists working with the older children. We have therapists doing art with the children. We have other therapists working with different therapy method. We have therapists working with yoga or with animals. So, and we're trying to match the victim, the child, to the right therapists.
In the process also, as I'm thinking, there's so much, and I'm just shooting from my hip here, but
Yes.
there's a whole process of restoring dignity with a child to bring back a sense of dignity. And the second part of the question is I'm just thinking how many cases it must be so hard for an adult to listen to a child who's been abused somewhere. And is that must be a huge problem. If a child is abused, and how do they communicate that to a parent who will take that seriously and then move on with it?
Well, there are two questions here. First, there is a matter of the therapist themselves. How can they handle with all the things that they hear? And then there is the question of the parents. So first of all, talking about the therapists themselves, first of all, they are not allowed to work more than half of their time in therapy because all the cases are very hard. And there is there is only there's only as much as you can handle, not more than that. Second thing is that every therapist in ELI have a therapist of his own. He does not have to handle everything by himself. He has someone to lean on. As for the parents, it vary very much because the parents can be cooperative, they can be uncooperative. Sometimes only one of them is cooperative. Sometimes they are divorced, and we have the mother coming in and the father not, or whatever. So it can vary very much. And sometimes in certain cases, like again, I'm going back to the example that I gave at the beginning with the 6 years old, the perpetrator is actually the father of the mother. And she, in this specific case, is cooperating with us, even though she is cooperating against her own father.
Yes, yes. Oh, by the way, it's mind-boggling how difficult all of this is that you have to that you have to deal with this, which it leads me to the next question. It's a good segue because we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, how important and delicate and involved and deep all this is. But your mother founded Ely and pioneered. And she was a pioneer. You know what I remember learning
Yes.
about her. She pioneered confronting child abuse, which has been locked up for so many years. Uh, you know, what parts of her life like live on in how you conduct yourself and how you lead? I mean, she's a constant presence.
Well, I'm especially influenced by her determination to create change wherever children need protection. And it does not yet exist everywhere. For example, in just the last 2 years, we developed professional programs addressing non-suicidal self-injury with children. an area that has not been sufficiently treated in Israel in the professional way it deserves. This is something that we started to work with. And we can work with it as the state of Israel as a state has started to do things that they did not do before.
Now, now to ask you a question, an interesting question. All this week in New York on NBC, they had a special segment talking about AI in mental health. And I've been looking into AI stuff for the past year and a half, 2 years. I was friendly with a psychologist out in Vancouver, and we started talking about AI 2 years ago, and I started interviewing him and asking all kinds of questions about AI. So my question to you is, as I'm thinking about it, semi off topic here, in the world of AI, is AI going to be a tool to help you, to help parents? Uh,
I cannot say what will happen in the future.
okay, that's valid.
It's unimaginable.
Yeah.
We cannot think about it. We can say that today AI might be dangerous in psychological work. It might lead you to dangerous places. I'm a big fan of the one-on-one human therapy sessions,
Uh,
especially as we are talking about children, young children who can be manipulated so easy.
what you just said is is so important. One-on-one human. That
Yes,
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 that's so important.
yes.
I've asked that question a whole bunch of times.
Yes,
I've interviewed.
especially with small children. And I'm even talking about the Zoom, which is not as good as the one-on-one interaction
Right,
with children. Maybe
right,
adults you can work with on the Zoom, but not children, not
right.
really.
You're right. You've got to really be hands-on. So what you said is so profound because in my little microcosmic world here, as I interview mental health professionals, and I've interviewed. It's funny. I've interviewed. She's a PhD, and she's the CEO of a dozen mental health clinics here in New Jersey. And I brought that up, AI, and she said nothing is going to replace one-on-one human contact, which is what you just said.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can sell a different story, but I will not believe in it.
And so in your as a CEO, you have to make strategic decisions. And how do you keep that human face and instill humanity into the decisions you make? Because the by the way, being the CEO of Ely is an enormous responsibility. I mean, the stuff you're doing and the quantity of people you're treating, it's so how do you deal with that? You know?
I need to do what I do, and I still need to pay the therapist every month.
Yeah.
So this is a big thing, even
Okay.
though it is not being seen very closely usually. Every day I see the children and their parents entering and leaving our treatment centers. My office is in the treatment center.
Okay.
Uh, when the world has collapsed, and when they finally meet the one person that they trust to leave home for, sometimes they don't leave home, but only to see the therapist in the therapy room. In my office, I see the numbers, but I always see the faces behind them because in the office, I'm seeing them. I right now, I'm thinking of a specific hug that I saw today from a child to the therapist as she came in to the therapy room. And this was such a special hug, the joy of coming in and seeing the
Wow.
therapist.
Wow. By the way, to me, a hug is one of the greatest human expressions. There's nothing like a hug,
Absolutely.
according to me. Over the years, I've evolved as a person, knowing that if you can hug somebody, it's everything. It's a wonderful expression, better than a handshake. Uh, so it's funny you
Yes.
said that. Um, as a CEO, have you had to make some really hard? I'm sure you do. You probably have to make some hard decisions all the time. And does any one decision stand out? Brave decision?
Uh, yes, I remember one decision that stood up. Actually, it was at the very beginning of the war, the October 7th. Within one day, I stopped almost everything and I mobilized the whole team to the hotels where the victims of the October 7th attack were.
So that
I
was
sent four therapists to every lobby of every hotel. They, they had a sign saying psychologist, and I can still tell you stories about that, of course,
wow. I can't even imagine. I can't.
because
Uh,
I knew that we have a lot of experience dealing with trauma, and this is a trauma, an acoustic trauma.
yeah, it's trauma. You know, we get little pieces of that here. You know, I was just discussing this before you. I was interviewing a woman in Ohio. We were talking about our world. We were talking about cell phone. We were talking about violence, and every day in America there's another mass shooting,
Exactly.
another mass shooting, and all those people who are involved in that need counseling, or a mass shooting in a school and those poor kids. By the way,
Ex-
a mass shooting in a school. I mean, I don't know anything about it other than what you read and you see and hear, but I can't even grasp that every kid in that school is going to be impacted.
I've been to Jeffco in Florida. They are dealing exactly with such cases in mass shooting in schools, working with the children from those schools. It's the almost exactly the same work that we do in Israel.
Exactly. It's exactly what you're doing. Mass shootings and wars and everything going on. Uh, uh, the 250 or 300 kids in that school where there was a mass shooting and six people died. These
We
kids
have
are
a
going to
lot
be
of
impacted forever.
we have a lot of professional experience to share with each other, actually.
And that's a key, what you just said. You know, listening to you in a very small way, my doing this interview is to share some of that knowledge and to expose, and to share and to show and to highlight and feature the work that you're doing and all around this wonderful little planet of ours, to share these experiences to help deal with this stuff. And that's why I was looking forward to tapping in and learning from you, because I see and experience all this stuff, and in small ways I've dealt with it. Is there, which is a segue, is can we raise children? Can we raise children who are growing up in a normal way to make them more aware and more resilient of what's and more emotionally open of what's really going on in this world? So, in other words, I'm saying, is there a prevention and to make them stronger? Is that something valid? I'm kind of just thinking about this now.
Yes, this is the work that we are doing in the education system as we go through the schools with our special school-based prevention and awareness program for the children in order to make them more resilient, in order to uh, understand how to react We even, with the smaller children in the kindergarten, we trained them how to shout, to cry for help. We had a mother calling in after we've been with her child in the kindergarten, and she said that we have saved her child as she actually shouted for help as someone tried to push her into the toilets of a synagogue, and she knew how to shout because she was trained how to shout in the kindergarten, and she cried for help.
Wow. Wow. Um, uh,
Another thing is we had another amazing example at court as a judge asked a small girl, "How did you know how to defend yourself?" Because she knew what to do. And she told the judge that she knew because Yael told her. And Yael was the puppet in the play.
wow. 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 Powerful stuff. Um, if an adult is listening to this and feels they want to do something about something, but they don't know where to begin, because is that part of the problem? Adults may see or know and don't know where and don't know how to begin the process of all this. What would you say to somebody? Uh, uh, you know, it's
Well,
hard.
if we want to invest, we would invest much more in equipping educators with better tools. Teachers, school staff are often the adults closest to the children in their daily lives, and they need stronger professional support and training because they have the goodwill, but they don't always know, they don't have the right tools in order to deal with it.
So there is prevention.
Yes,
There is prevention,
absolutely.
which is a key word. Um, uh, how and people can find the work and see your work online at Ely, correct?
Yes, if you are looking for us, you need to type American Friends of Eli, ELI.
Okay,
You can find us online, of course.
okay. I'm just writing this down. You know, it's funny. You never. There's just so much involved in what you're doing. It's so intense. We just discussed, mass shooting, all this violence. I look at New York City every day. Somebody's getting shot. Somebody's getting shot. Not even talking about mass shootings, just a shooting. Somebody's getting pushed onto the subway, and those families and those worlds of people, and even now we're talking about the young kids, the young people involved, and seeing that the young kids in school. In other words, what I'm saying is all this violence that we see in the shootings, every day another kid is shooting another kid in New York, and all the classmates have to deal with that, and they're affected. And I mean, they're affected. And no, I don't believe. I'm spinning this as I go along. I don't believe there's any kind of. I don't believe there's any kind of help going into that school to talk to these kids who knew that one of their classmates in eighth grade got shot and killed. And that's part of your work, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's something that we do. It exists, never enough, because I'm not sure about what the situation is in New York, but you need to have this kind of tools in every school available to bring whenever there is a crisis or something, then teams must be mobilized to the school.
you know what? I'm not being dramatic, but as you've caused me to really think about this stuff, around that normally I wouldn't have thought about, and talking to you now, and learning, and because I don't think any, listen, thank goodness in my little microcosmic world, I haven't, with my son growing up, and my two grandchildren, great joy. It's just it's a beautiful thing to see grandchildren and stuff. But never considering all this, and so it leads me to my last uh, thing that I wrote down, um, and it's an interesting thing because it's what you do at Ely, and what other teams all over the world are doing, and how important it is, because it never leaves. What happens and what they see and hear in their world never leaves them, and it's so overwhelming. Again, I look at myself. I look at myself 60 plus years later, still
as,
affected.
as a mirror to the society.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, um, so everything you're doing, it's not about necessarily, yes, it is, but it's not about protecting children from harm. It's about protecting the possibility of what a child might become. So if a child is affected, they could have gone on to become this, that, a healer and a contributor to mankind, but that might affect. So that's how important the stuff you're doing is.
Yes, we're talking sometimes about children where we catch them in a certain moment in their lives on a junction where they can rise up and become important big CEOs, or they can drown into prostitution or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this is where we are meeting them. This is what we have to do to bring them to on the right path. Just to put the first engine on the rails, and they will keep on moving.
wow. Um, Hey, this has been, my mind is spinning, as I've interviewed people, it would be kind of nice if I could put together a little panel and bring you in to talk more about this, because you know what? Part of the whole thing is talking, and uncovering and learning and sharing and experiencing and bringing people together who have common interests. And I mean, I could reach out and touch some people. I thought I'd love to, people who have been affected by abuse as kids, and maybe maybe somebody who's a mental health CEO of a bunch of clinics here. Maybe I can bring a whole bunch of folks together. We could talk about this stuff. Just a thought.
Okay,
And and
please
you-
do.
and you've evoked that from me listening to you and learning what you're doing, because what you're doing is for all of us.
Of
It's
course.
for the future of society, and a healthy society. So, thank you so much for your time, and for this, giving us this and sharing this stuff. And actually, you lit some fires in me. I like doing these kind of things because you actually shined the light, making me understand. Just my goodness, there's so much we don't consider as a society, and how we don't consider this. We're busy, watching football and soccer and stuff and stuff
Which
and
is
stuff.
important by itself.
It is taking nothing away, but a child, my goodness, and I marvel the 3 or 4 or 5 times a week I see my grandchildren, and knowing what the goodness that goes in and what you're getting out, and it's such a gift, and we should share that gift with all children, and that's what you're doing. So that's good stuff. Lots more needs to be done. And I think education is a key.
Yes,
Education, people to understand everything going on, especially with what you're doing. So, in a small way, I've begun a little journey. I like journeys. It keeps me busy, keeps me young too. By the way, I think journeys are a key to longevity. You know, as I'm sitting here, 80 plus
absolutely
years old.
right.
Yep. I believe that, and it's a spiritual thing, and this thing keeps working. And so you've lit a fire, Iran, and I want to
Excellent,
thank you.
excellent.
So thank you for being here. I'm just going to stop recording. Don't leave. We'll do a 2 minute wrap, but thank you so much, and I would love you to come back, and we'll talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you.